Welcome to the Lee Schools TV podcast. I'm Adam Wright. Joining us today is Kathy Wynne, Prevention Specialist for the School District of Lee County. Kathy, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. So you have a very important job. So what does a Prevention Specialist do?
Well, what we do is we provide education and support to schools, to parents, to students regarding different topics that we know touch our students' lives every day. And so we, have information about alcohol, drug, and tobacco use, social media information, anti-bullying information, so various different things, as well as we provide support for the schools with peer mediation and restorative practices as well. So our job is to support the schools, the students, and the parents to help get our students the best that they can be.
Yeah. So before we get into some things, major topics of concern that you're working on, just a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background and how you came to work for the school district.
Oh, okay. Well, prior to having children a while ago, I worked in social services primarily for older adults, so working with the elderly, but I was a stay-at-home mom after I had children. And when my youngest daughter started kindergarten, I started substitute teaching at my child's school and kind of followed them through middle school. So I substitute taught for about 9 years. And then I started working at the Hanley Foundation as a prevention specialist. And from there, then I've started here this year.
Okay. Well, one of the main reasons we wanted to have you on is to talk about tobacco and vaping, e-cigarettes,
right,
and the nicotine addiction that can come along with that. Is it safe to say that we are seeing an increase in the popularity of e-cigarettes and vaping at our schools?
We definitely are, not just our schools, but teens in general throughout the county, throughout the state of Florida, and throughout the nation. And so what seems to have happened is as we watch cigarette smoking decrease with teens, and again, thanks to education and information, the word is out that, cigarettes are very harmful. Over 480,000 people die every year from smoking. It's the number one preventable disease in the United States. So we did a great job educating people about the dangers of cigarettes. But then what's happened is with the e-cigarettes being created and used, they were promoted as adult cessation, so to help adults stop smoking cigarettes, to wean them off the nicotine, just like a nicotine patch, like the nicotine gum. The goal was you would start using the e-cigarettes and start with a certain amount of nicotine, and each week you would lower the amount of nicotine that you were using until you didn't have withdrawals and you were not dependent on nicotine anymore. But instead what happened is with all the different flavors and social media campaigns and so on, what we did is we ended up having youth start using e-cigarettes. Teens that never had smoked cigarettes before are now using e-cigarettes, or vaping as they call it. The term vaping came up because we used to think that e-cigarettes were water vapor and they were not, in any way dangerous. And now we know that's not water vapor, it's aerosol. It does have a lot of different chemicals. The chemicals even intensify as the e-cigarette works to heat up the e-juice. And so what's happened is now we are facing what the Surgeon General has deemed an epidemic of teen e-cigarette use. And
I've got just a couple statistics here. This is from truthinitiative.org. Okay. I know that one of the more popular e-cigarettes out there is the Juul.
Right. Yes.
I hear high schoolers talking about that here
yes,
and there.
Yes.
And it says, one Juul pod contains 20 cigarettes worth of nicotine.
Right. It's got the same nicotine as a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah. And almost 1/5, so about 1 in 5 middle and high school students have seen a Juul used at their school. So yes, pretty prevalent.
Juul is hugely popular. In fact, as of last summer even, they had over 70% of the e-cigarette market. And so they have taken off because teens like cool looking electronic devices. I mean, they love something, that is on the cutting edge. It's cool. It looks like a flash drive. It's easily concealed, and it appealed to the teens in a lot of ways. Besides having flavored pods and so on, I think in what you're referring to, the Truth Initiative, they said the 63% of teens who use Juul had no idea that all Juuls contain nicotine. And the way they deliver the nicotine, they use nicotine salts. And so they're 2.7 times more quickly absorbed into the body. So they definitely get that feeling of a nicotine quicker, which unfortunately with a teen and their brain not being fully developed makes it much more likely that they will become addicted to nicotine.
And I know a lot of them, come in different like flavors, fruity flavors that can be attractive as well.
That's true. That's true.
How would you say, how big of a problem would you say it is at our schools?
In Lee County, one thing we noticed, we use our Florida Youth Survey. That's a survey that's done every year in the state of Florida, in usually April. And we get statistics every other year from not just Florida, but then they break it down by county. So our 2018 Florida Youth Survey, we have Lee County and Florida statistics. And as we've noticed the decrease in cigarette use, we've noticed, again, the increase in vaping. And so from 2016 to 2018, tobacco vaping has gone up in Lee County 17%. 10 times a high school, middle schooler, and high schoolers reported as far as whether they had used a regular traditional cigarette in the past 30 days. Less than 2% had, but 10 times that amount. So 18 point something percent said they had tried a Juul in the past 30 days. Wow. And so we are noticing the increase, and it's not just in Lee County, it's everywhere. Our students in Lee County are a little bit lower than the average for cigarette use than the rest of the state of Florida, but we're a little bit higher than the average for e-cigarette use. And so our goal is to those that are already using, is to get information to them, so that they recognize that it's something that they need to, stop doing, and why. Just like when people were addicted to cigarettes and they didn't know it was bad for them, and then when they found out, they needed to try to curb their use. And then also the prevention part, which is a huge part, is to let the students that aren't using, because the great majority of students are not using. We can say that if 31% and somewhere in the low 30s of Lee County students had said they reported that they have tried e-cigarettes ever in their life, again, flip that. We have a majority of students who have not, and we want to keep it that way. We'd love to see the number of users go down, and we would love to see those that never try it continue to not use that.
And that's part of the social norming initiative too, right?
Right.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
So who do you know who is most affected by this? I'm assuming it's majority of high school students, but I mean, you see them starting to get involved with it in middle school.
Definitely it is being found in middle school. So middle schoolers they want to be on the cutting edge of what's new and cool also, and that's always the case, And if you have, they're more likely to do it if they have friends that do it, if their parents do it. I've had students tell me when I've done prevention that their mom used to smoke cigarettes, and she started vaping, and she was able to get off of smoking cigarettes, but her dad, who had never smoked cigarettes, started vaping, tried it because his wife was doing it, and he continues to vape nicotine now. And the same thing happens with teens. If they see other people doing it, they try. Some people are more susceptible to getting addicted to anything, whether it's nicotine, alcohol. And if you use before the age of 18, you're 4 times more likely to start smoking later in life. And so we have a lot of dual users, even adults. Half of the adults that use e-cigarettes also continue to smoke traditional cigarettes. So it's not really, it hasn't been approved by the FDA, it hasn't been approved by the American Lung Association, even for adults, as a real cessation program. So they haven't proven that it really will reduce a majority of cigarette smoking by vaping. And so that's the thing. You know, they approve lozenges, they approve patches, they approve gum, there's a couple of prescription drugs and so on, but they haven't approved e-cigarettes, and there's a reason. Because even though people say it's harmless, it's not harmless. So they were like, but it's better than cigarettes. And it's like, less harm does not equal harmless. There's a lot of harmful things about vaping and e-cigarette use.
Well, let's get into that.
Okay.
What are some health effects that you've seen?
Right.
And you brought up addiction as well.
Right. Well, again, teens, because their brains aren't completely, finished forming or developed until they're in their mid-20s, they are much more prone to damaging some of the connections of the brain, and those that help with impulsivity, and those that memory and those type of things. Those can be affected by using e-cigarettes at an early age. We also have a lot of different lung diseases that come from using e-cigarettes.
Yeah, it can't be good for your lungs.
It's not good for your lungs. There's a lot of different chemicals in it. You have your diacetyl, which it causes popcorn lung. That's in a lot of the flavorings that they use in different e-cigarette juices. So when you're talking about, there's thousands and thousands of flavors if you're using the e-cigarettes, where you buy the flavoring and add it to your reusable cartridges type thing. There's a lot of different chemicals, lead, tin, and again, like I said, when you're heating that thing, it multiplies. So they're finding, even things like arsenic and formaldehyde. So there's a lot of different things in it, but it's the nicotine that gets people addicted, just like it was the nicotine in the traditional cigarettes that got people addicted, and the nicotine is what gets people addicted. And a lot. There are some e-juices and so on that don't have a nicotine. Again, all of the Juuls have nicotine, so that nicotine getting is what gets the people addicted, and they continue to use.
And what kind of effects can the addiction have on students and just their work in school?
Well, it can affect them in the way that, just like anybody, we have laws now in workplaces that we can't even, in fact, the law just passed, we can't use e-cigarettes in workplaces anymore, as per our last election. So people have problems if they aren't able to have access to nicotine during the day. Well, the teens who are addicted are having the same problems. And those are the ones that, that end up eventually being caught on school premises using their Juuls or whatever, because it's hard for them to get through the day. They will start to have withdrawal. They'll be anxious. They'll, it's a true addiction. And that's one thing we do try to educate parents about. Like, first, what I tell them is, your child does not have to be bad, quote unquote, to be using these devices, because teens are prone to trying things and being risk takers. Getting addicted to nicotine, I don't think they set out to try to do that.
Yeah, maybe they're just trying to fit in with a group of people.
So they may be, and they get addicted to the nicotine. So we advise parents, you can't just, if they are addicted to the nicotine, that abrupt withdrawal can cause all sorts of problems. So if you do find that your child is using Juul or any other e-cigarette, and they say that they can't stop, you need to go to your family physician and find out about how to help wean your child off the nicotine to get them to quit. Because just like anything, nicotine addiction, they say that it is almost as addictive. Nicotine is almost as addictive as alcohol, cocaine, or heroin. Wow. And so you don't see people just like, cold turkey, adults trying to quit those things without some type of assistance or support. And so that would be a harsh thing to do to your teen. Just take his supplies away and, expect that they're going to be able to continue with life as they know it. They will need probably medical intervention.
Wow. And I'm sure it can pull them away from their learning, right? Because I'm sure they're not just waiting until in between classes or the beginning and end of the day to
when somebody has a habit, they're, we whether it's, using marijuana or whatever, a lot of times one of the signs of dependency is you're thinking about, how am I going to get to use it? How am I going to get access to this? Where can I go where I'll be able to use this and not get caught? So, they have a lot of other things, but if they do become addicted to nicotine, they're trying to figure out what's the best way. How am I going to get, access to my Juul, or if it was another drug, just like for anybody. So it just takes a lot of their time
so they're
thinking about it.
So they're not paying attention to their teacher, and then they may leave class in the middle of a lesson to go to the bathroom or whatever.
Classes to try to vape at the school, or however it does affect their learning. And not to mention again that if they are using it can affect their memory and like I said, some other learning problems.
Do you find that it's more prevalent in boys versus girls, or does it not discriminate in that way?
I don't really have statistics for that, so no, I don't really think that it differentiates that much. It's like I said, and it doesn't differentiate. You got your AP and IB students, and you have your athletes, and you have the kids that maybe don't have as good attendance, that maybe have some behavior problems. It covers the whole spectrum. So again, we want parents to know, don't think you're comfortable because your kid's getting straight A's or whatever, they may still be using this. And conversely, it's not just the quote unquote bad kids that are doing this. It's really everybody. I don't think any parent, if they ask their student, they probably know somebody that uses Juul or another e-cigarette.
Yeah. Now there's a whole other side of this that we have to talk about as well, and that's that these e-cigarettes have presented a new way for people to smoke marijuana as well. That's
right.
And so how prevalent have you found that, as far the amount of students maybe who are using it just for the nicotine part, and then how many do you think are using it for to smoke THC as well?
Well, we don't have statistics for Florida and for Lee County about marijuana vaping, but we do have Monitoring the Future does also national surveys, and so their numbers for 2018 show also an increase in marijuana vaping.
I know there have certainly been cases at schools
there
here
have
where
been cases at
kids
school
have been
here
caught.
for sure. Again, with the devices that now are available, there's very little. It's very hard to detect. You don't have the smell as much. They can do it much more discreetly, and the problem is what they're using in the e-cigarette devices. And when you're vaping marijuana, they call that dabbing, and they're using marijuana concentrates. And here's the real big problem with marijuana concentrates. Back in the early 90s, when we talk about traditional marijuana, the THC level, which is the psychoactive or mind-altering drug that is in marijuana, that level was maybe 3.7% THC. And then in 2013, it was up to about 9.3 or some percent THC. Now with these concentrates that, and I don't want to say just kids are using them, but that people are using. If you're using THC concentrates, the THC levels are so much more. It's really unbelievable. And so what the average THC level for a THC concentrate is 50%, and it could be as high as 80%. And so again, you're looking at something that has so much more power. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't know that even having possession of 1 drop of THC oil, because of that high THC content, it's a felony in the state of Florida or in federal law. So,
Yeah, that was
that
going to be
is
my next question is,
Yeah,
you know,
that's a big
when
issue.
students get caught with these devices at school, what are the consequences?
And the consequences would be different if it was a regular Juul or e-cigarette, as opposed to having THC, because unfortunately, like I said, with THC, it's an arrest usually because it's a felony. So that's a huge consequence, obviously. It's not something that they can work with the kids as much as, okay, this is your first offense, you have tobacco on school premises. Tobacco on school premises, we follow our code of conduct, and there could be depending on different things, first offense, second offense. Some of the consequences would be suspension. There would be alternative placement, so they might have to go to Success Academy. They might participate in our SAFE programs, the substance abuse family enforcement. I can't remember what the E is, but they have a SAFE program where they can go and they talk to counselors, and families have to be involved. So those are some of the things. The schools can also choose to have the student take an online tobacco and vaping educational program, and that's one that is fairly common that schools do that to inform them about tobacco and nicotine and vaping and that type of thing, and try to go the educational, because it has been proven punitive. Punitive doesn't always work best when you're talking about these type of offenses, and so we need to help educate and offer them resources and sometimes counseling, and so we try to get them in the place they can get access to those things.
And you also have monthly parent education programs that you offer as well.
Right.
To
What
help.
we've been doing something new this year is the prevention department. We've been creating programs on these different topics that touch our students' lives. And so every month we have a topic, and we have student presentations available for school staff to use. We can share it in Google Drive. So we have a presentation with talking notes. We have a pre-test, post-test if they choose to use it. We have handouts. We have blurbs that they could run on their news. But it's something new, so it isn't something that every school is utilizing at this point, but we want them to be utilizing. And it's great that we do it in a Google Drive, because we can update as we see fit, and so they can go in and get it, and if we made changes yesterday, they have those changes. And so that's something that we do, whereas if you purchase a program from somewhere, what you have is what you have. But we're able to update, and we can change around the handouts as new statistics come up. We can update. So we have those available for schools to use to help educate the students. We have parent presentations now every month, like you said, one in each zone, and we have them from 6 to 7 o'clock at night. And we also have handouts for parents. The one we give to the parents isn't the exact same one we give students. So we have had parents bring their students. We may be talking about what to look for. And so now your student knows, or your child knows, what you're going to be looking for. We do give parents, they're not the exact same presentation, but we give them this information. And we've had them on bullying, we've had them on opioids, we've had it on tobacco and vaping. This month we're doing our presentations on marijuana, next month social media, and then in April it will be alcohol. And then we hope next year to really make sure all the schools are aware these programs are out there. But we're doing our best to try to keep parents informed, because we really need to work together with the parents. The parents have to have the knowledge about it so they can have a conversation with their children. And so we want them to talk to their kids early and often, but they need to have the facts too. And the facts of what marijuana was in the 1980s and 1990s is not the same, animal that we're dealing with now, as far as with these concentrates and so on, especially with medical marijuana, being legal in the state of Florida. States that have legalized medical marijuana are noticing a slight increase because it's becoming more available, and their teens are they don't disapprove of it as marijuana as much, because they're like, well, it's medical, it's good for people, it's all natural. And so we like to give the students and the parents the myths and the facts of how that can affect their kids, so they need to be aware so they can have those conversations with their kids.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that there's plenty of studies out there, and this is, I think, maybe something that a lot of students don't realize is, the human brain is still developing up until about 25 years of age.
Exactly.
And I got another article from teens.drugabuse.gov, and it talks about how if you start smoking marijuana or using marijuana at an early age, it can lower your IQ.
Yes, it definitely it can. And again, something to me, I can't say it enough. So if I'm repeating myself, there's a reason. When they talk to people, adults who have addiction problems and dependency problems, and they say, how old were you when you started? 90% of people who have addiction problems started using prior to the age of 18, and only 4%, so 1 out of 25 people, said they started using after the age of 21. And so the message is delay. And so even parents that think that smoking cigarettes isn't that big a deal, it is a big deal still. And so this nicotine addiction is a big deal, because their brains are forming connections where they feel that they need certain substances to feel the same way, what I mean? So basically, we just want people to know, prior to the age of 18, you are so much more. 9 out of 10 people who have addiction problems started using before the age of 18, and only 4%, 1 out of 25, started using after the age of 21. And so that's just a huge thing. And so if you can, keep your teens from using, and to do that, you're going to have conversations with them about it, and you're going to have it with them more than once. You're going to have to driving under the influence of marijuana. It feels like we did so great with MAD and all these programs that people know. If your friends don't let friends drive drunk and that type of thing, take your friend's keys away, call an Uber or whatever. But they don't have the same idea that driving under the influence of marijuana, even if it's medical marijuana prescribed by your doctor, you can still be arrested for driving under the influence of marijuana if you are,
because it must slow your reaction time down. Of course, it slows your reaction
time. Is your so many things. Yeah. It does affect.
Well, I mean, that's going to be a big one.
Right,
slowing your reaction time. That's crucial when you're driving.
So that's very crucial. So they did a survey, and they talked to parents about, have you talked to your children? This was not in Florida, but have you talked to your children about driving under the influence of marijuana? And something like 73% of parents said, yes, I have had this conversation with my child. They asked the children, and just barely half of them said, yeah, my mom talked to me about that. So you're missing like 1/4 of them had no recollection. So just like anything with teens, you have to keep at it, and you have to keep mentioning it, because we do want them to be aware that don't let your friend drive high, don't ride in a car with someone who's been smoking marijuana, don't smoke marijuana and drive yourself. States that have recreational marijuana, they've noticed over a 6% increase in crashes in their states in the past. They think they went from 2012 to 2017, and they compared it with states that did not have recreational marijuana.
Maybe that quarter of kids forgot their parents told them about it because they were smoking dope.
That could be. Who knows?
I know you also wanted to mention the posters that were created that are
another initiative we're doing besides our educational programs for parents and students. We've had a student at Cape Coral Technical High make some posters, vaping prevention posters that show some of the different health things like we talked about. It could be this one says about you increase your risk of a heart attack. It can cause throat irritation, whoopsie.
It's okay. We'll get like the digital file and we'll put them up on the screen.
Lung damage, and so we're just trying to get the messages. And so we have sent these to all our Lee County middle schools and high schoolers to try to put those up. And we do have a contest every year. We're sponsored by United Way. We have a social norming poster contest. And those we ask students, some of them in digital design classes, but they can also be written artwork to help promote the message that the majority of Lee County teens are not smoking marijuana or drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes or whatever. So even, with the rise in vaping, we still have the, majority of students are making healthy choices. And so we need the word to get out because it's very important for teens. They, a lot of times, even when they're little, they're always like, well, everybody's doing it, or all my friends get to stay out to hear. What they think is really happening and what is really happening aren't always the same. Yeah. So we want them to know the actual facts. We use our Florida Youth Survey as that's our facts. That's our facts. And so we know the majority of students are not smoking, using drugs, using cigarettes, or marijuana or whatever.
That's what I wanted to talk about next, was social norming. So is that basically the definition of social norming? Is just letting students know that they may think they're in the minority because they're not doing what other kids, but they actually are in the majority? Their
perceptions on what's going on is not what's really going on in a lot of cases. And I mean, it's also important, it's interesting because, the public's perception, with all the publicity about teen vaping, and then this school had a case of, a student was caught with candy with THC, and their perception is also becoming that, these teens, and they're using all these drugs, and they're, they're all vaping, and, what's become of us. And it's, you hear a lot about the negative, but we are still, we have great teenagers and great students in Lee County School District, and a majority of them are making good decisions and leading healthy, productive lives.
Okay, and then one more thing I had that I wanted to make sure we talked about was the Talk 15 campaign.
Our Talk 15 initiative is also United Way sponsored, and that's we have a public service announcement that we create, and we are right now. Over spring break, it should be shown in theaters. So we show that in movie theaters and during peak seasons where we think students and parents will be there, and just getting out the message to parents to talk to their children about alcohol, drugs. How do you feel about it? What do you approve? Because students that know how their parents feel about it, it makes a very big impact on them. So if they know what your stance is, they're more likely to make better decisions. And so again, we can't stress that enough. So our Talk 15 initiative is through PSAs. We also have a wrap on some of the Lee Tram buses about Talk 15. So spend 15 minutes a day talking to your student, and 15 minutes, whether you're driving them home. A lot of times if you have students in the backseat and you're not like sitting there or making eye contact, that's actually a good time to talk to them. They don't feel like they're being, interrogated or under inquisition. So you can just casually talk to them at dinner time when you're doing an activity. So it doesn't have to be some long, we're going to have the drug talk now, but you just bring things up. And what you've noticed, like I'm reading a lot about, teen vaping. Like, do you have any friends that do that? Do they know? Did you know this? And so getting the information to parents so they can talk to their students about it and have, the facts about it is important.
So would you say there's a wrong way to approach, trying to have a conversation with your child?
Well, they do say that, try not to get angry. When you ask a question, you really don't know what the answer is going to be. And so if you want to be able to continue having conversations, you're going to have to, go at it in the way of from understanding, from an educational. If you find out something that they're doing that you disapprove of, then try to talk about how they can change their behavior and if they need help changing their behavior. Again, if a student admits to his parents that they're vaping, they may say that I can't quit, and you can't just take it away from them, so you have to come at it in a loving way, but you also need to let them know what your beliefs are, and remember that you are their main role model. So what you do and what you're doing, your child does notice.
Yeah,
they notice it when
example.
They're little. Yeah. Right, exactly. Lead by example.
Speaking of students who might need help, what would be your best suggestion for maybe a student who's struggling with substance abuse?
Right.
A resource for them. Who should they talk to if they're not comfortable talking to their parents?
Right. Their medical doctor is great. There are resources. We have a mental health page on the school district website now. If you typed in prevention in the school search, we have some resources, including NIDA and National Institute of Drug Abuse. So we have informational handouts. I don't think they could go wrong talking to their school counselor. Yeah. School counselors are the best resource if they want to talk to somebody and get information. So those are different avenues they can take. There are places you can text and get information. A lot of times students don't want a phone number to call. They're not used to talking to people on the phone, and a lot of adults aren't either. Yeah. But there are texting things. United Way 211. If you call 211 in Lee County, you will get a United Way person, and they could ask them. They can send you resources. If they don't answer, you leave a message, they call back, and the best thing is they follow up a couple weeks later to see if you were able to get what you needed or whatever. Mm-hmm. So there are resources out there. So the school counselor is great. United Way 211 is great. Our website has some stuff, so hopefully no student is struggling and not knowing where to turn.
So how do folks find your website? Where can they go?
With the new website, they have to go to the school search and
just
regular leeschools.net, and then there's a little search at the top right, and they can type in prevention services, or they can type in mental health, and those pages have resources on them.
All right. And I know you guys are on Twitter too, at
we
Lee
are
Prevention.
On Twitter. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So your next parent prevention seminar is Monday at Varsity Lakes?
Yes, we do.
Middle school?
We have our parent presentation Monday night, so that would be March 4th at Varsity Lakes Middle School. And again, it doesn't matter where your student goes. It doesn't matter even if you have a student. If you want to get educated about marijuana, and we'll tell you some things to look for, some signs of marijuana use, signs of marijuana withdrawal, these types of things, and facts and myths about marijuana. Come on out. We all have handouts. And we would love to see parents attending some of the prevention programs that we're offering.
Yeah, so Monday, March 4th, 6 o'clock,
6
Varsity
o'clock.
Lakes Middle School.
Yes, sir.
In Lehigh Acres.
Yep.
All right, Kathy, Wynne, prevention specialist, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. It's a lot of good information.
Great. Thank you.
All right, and thank you for watching and listening. We'll see you next time.